Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, and today we have a special guest in the First Pacific Financial Studio. It is Ridgefield Raptors General Manager Gus Farah. Gus, thank you for taking some time. Those of you who follow the show know we mostly talk about high school sports, but the Ridgefield Raptors have become kind of a local institution or a baseball community, and there's plenty of overlap that will lead us to talk about baseball at all levels, including high school sports. So, Gus, thank you for spending some time and coming down with us.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. It's exciting to always see you, but this takes me back 6 years to when we were in a studio talking about bringing the team to Southwest Washington, and just the excitement we had to just share that news. And now we're 6 years later, so unbelievable.
Well, time does fly. And, like I said, for those of our audience who mostly follow us for high school sports and maybe haven't been out to a Raptors game, why don't you tell the audience, who are the Ridgefield Raptors?
Yeah, the Raptors are a high-level college woodbat league, or play in a woodbat league that is mostly in the Northwest. And what we do is develop college kids. We develop them so that one of two things happen for them. One is that they become really good college players when they go back to their schools, or two is that they're going to eventually get drafted. And this is just summer development that also shows off their talent so that MLB can keep scouting them.
Well, one of the most fun elements of following the Ridgefield Raptors for me over recent years has been how many players with connections to Clark County end up getting playing time, not only for Ridgefield, but also in the league as a whole. You play your home games out at the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex, a beautiful facility, a facility that we can talk about more that I think has really become allowed the baseball community to really thrive around that. But when you think about a local kid, maybe straight out of high school or with a local connection, what are you looking for? And how do you decide how to bring a kid like that in?
Well, I think the one thing you said is that local matters to us, and give an opportunity to local kids matter to us. So we always try and feature kids that grew up locally, that played high school locally, and that now can come home for the summer. We also have a few high school graduates, so they graduate in the spring, early summer, and they get their first taste of high-level baseball with the Raptors and in the West Coast League. Now, the challenge for them is that it's pretty overwhelming physically and mentally. They are going to be playing against 20, 21-year-olds, and they struggle at times. But if they're going to stay and play in the league, we want them with us. It gives their family a chance to see them locally. It gives our fans a chance to root a little extra hard, I think, for kids that come from Southwest Washington. And there's a lot of talent. That, as your 360 Sports Show always highlights, there's a lot of talent around here.
Yeah, I want to talk about how important that local connection is for the whole roster, because those of you who follow the Ridgefield Raptors know this, but those of you who maybe are learning about the team, these are players that are coming from all over the country. A lot of kids come up from California. We've had players from colleges in Texas, in Oklahoma, in Ohio. These are kids that maybe it's their first time living away from home for an extended period. So do the local kids who know the community and know the area kind of take that role as sort of maybe a little bit of a tour guide sometimes?
Yeah, and I think their families do, because the kids are all host familied. So every kid that comes in for the summer lives with a local family in Southwest Washington. And I think that the kids that come and stay with a family of a player that is local gets an advantage, which is a lot more detail. They get the extra care of what is happening around here, and it accelerates, their introduction into Southwest Washington. Yeah, the beautiful community that we live in, but also what are the little nuances of the things we like to do around here?
that local connection extends to your coaching staff as well. Obviously, the head coach, Chris Cota, he comes from Southern California and has definitely used those connections with the baseball community down there to bring a lot of great talent up here. But you also have Nick Allen, who's basically been a mainstay with the Ridgefield Raptors organization. He, of course, everyone who follows high school baseball knows him as the head coach of the Ridgefield Spudders, Ridgefield High School. Yep. So what has Nick meant to kind of strengthening those local bonds that not only your team has been able to make, but also kind of serving as sort of that local guy that players from out the area
That's a great question, because I want to start with Chris Cota. Yeah. So Chris is coming back for his 6th year. Remember, we had a COVID year, so 5 seasons, 6 years. And Chris has been our only manager. And it's meant a lot. We've made the playoffs 3 times in a row. We haven't got the result we wanted every year, but just to make the playoffs is not easy. Chris is a great leader. He has a certain amount of discipline that he brings and knowledge of 21 years as the head coach at College of the Canyons down in the LA area. But Nick, when we first brought Nick on, we thought it was a good solution to bring in local flavor to what these kids were going to experience. And I think that there's so much more that 6 years later we've learned. Nick is not only a good baseball coach, he's a good man, but I think that Nick also, there's an operations piece to this, that whether we run the park in the summer, which we do, but Nick has the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex as his home field. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain knowledge of just the operation of it that Nick can always help with. Nick does a lot of the scouting and tracking of analytics for Chris. And he's just become not only a friend of ours, but just like when you asked about local players, there's always an extra love from the community, the baseball community with the Raptors, towards local players, local coaches. So Nick definitely brings that. And I can always bug him when I need an extra driver or something, because he lives near to my own home. So, but he just gives us a depth here locally that Chris doesn't have, because Chris comes in every summer, but Nick makes it feel local.
I've always appreciated kind of the rapport and the balance that those two have. I get to hear them when they're after a game, maybe having some food or a beer, up in the clubhouse, and just how they really, I believe, kind of complement each other in their outlooks of baseball. Chris, obviously, he's been around the game for decades. Yeah. He's a great teacher. He is just, I think,
he's calming.
Yeah, he knows how to get the best out of kids who maybe are in a situation where maybe their arms are a little tired because they're not used to the innings that they're suddenly getting in rapid succession, or a position player who maybe hasn't played 5 games in 7 days. But go ahead.
Chris and Nick have similar personalities. Yeah. They're pretty calm. Yeah. I'm sure that in their own moments they get crazy like the rest of us, but they're calming, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a long summer, but let's back up off of summer. Let's talk about January 1st. What happened? They were on Christmas break. They came back to school. They started working out for the spring season in their colleges. They played an entire season, and now they instantly pivoted and came to a summer team like the Ridgefield Raptors. And they are tired at times. They are heartbroken because they haven't been home. They miss their girlfriends sometimes, whatever, silly but real. Mm-hmm. And so they're going through a lot. You also mentioned something, that this might be the first time that they have been sent or have made a decision to go to an environment outside of a college or their home. So they're going to learn a couple things. They're going to learn if the grind of baseball, because baseball is a grinded out sport, they're going to learn if that grind is something they want to do long term, or if that grind is something that teaches them, and they tell me at the end of the season sometimes, you know what, I'm just going to study. And we're going to have our next engineer or custodian or NASA science, whatever it is. And that is the relationship that probably we are looking for in the long run with them, is how do they continue building themselves as young men that are productive in society and have successful families, and they show, they become good, young, solid people. So it's not always about the baseball. This is also their first time into traveling on a bus, being on a per diem, sharing rooms, all these things that they maybe haven't done, but they're going to figure it out real quick. And by the end of the season, they're either just chomping at the bit to get back and grind some more at their college, or they're probably going home and saying, you know what, this was a lot, and I think I might want to become a really good student.
Well, I've heard some people say that a season in the West Coast League is really equivalent to what it's like at a rookie league, minor league baseball team. You're traveling to Canada on a bus. You're going over to Bend for a 3-game series and staying in a hotel there, or you're going to Eastern Washington. And so, it's that lifestyle for maybe a player who might enter the major league draft and decide to take that next level. They're really getting a sneak preview.
Totally. And like I mentioned already, this is a good judgment point for them. We've had kids here. I'll bring one up, Justin Boyd. I think it was our first or second year. Sorry. My memory is down to first or second year. But Justin came to us as the Gatorade Player of the Year in Colorado with high promise. Mm-hmm. And he got overwhelmed in the summer that first year. He showed signs of greatness, but he showed a lot of signs of being overwhelmed. Why are they overwhelmed when they come here at first? If they're especially right out of high school, they're not physically or mentally ready. They haven't grinded it out long enough like the older kids have. So Justin leaves here, goes back to Oregon State, and becomes a super accomplished college player, and ends up getting drafted, I think, in the 8th round by the Cincinnati Reds. So what we see in players when they're here is hard sometimes because we want them to excel at a high level for the fans and for us winning games. But what we also find out is that watching them and following them as they continue to grow in this career and in this first experiment of, travel and all the things you mentioned, you start seeing it develop as they go back and they grab another year or two of college. There's a Micah McDowell. There's a Justin Boyd. There are just some really talented players that were here in Ridgefield that, didn't show off as much as we wanted them to because they're growing.
You mentioned a player like Micah McDowell, and one similarity he has with a whole other bunch of Raptors is Oregon State that you mentioned. Oregon State, obviously, anyone who follows baseball knows the track record of success that program has had over the past couple of decades. When you're convincing college kids, or more important, their coaches, to let their kids come and spend the summer with you, what sort of a different conversation are you having now that you have a track record of success and responsibility that you can point to?
Yeah, which takes time, by the way, to build the track record. I think you see teams like Corvallis that have just had way over the top success of multiple championships in a row. That's an old team in our league. And it takes time to build that relationship with some colleges that can send you a better kid instead of the kid that we know is going to really be, have a bit of a struggle. So that confidence from the colleges to us in giving us their kids, I think some things they expect from us is that we're going to work them hard and develop them. So the coaching staff is going to put in time outside of game time to keep developing them. I think that they want some discipline because they don't want their kids to fall by the wayside and make mistakes during the summer, and they are kids. But I think their health is really key. I mean, you mentioned earlier when, Chris managing kids that get fatigued. We're watching that. And a kid usually comes here, especially the pitchers, not so much the hitters, with a certain amount of innings that they're allowed to pitch because they've already thrown some in the spring. So when they get here, they have an assignment of you get 40 innings, or you get 30 innings, or you get 70 innings, whatever it is, based on what happened in the spring in college. And our job is to not only throw them 40 or 50 or 70 innings, it's to make sure they're healthy. Nothing is worse than when a kid gets hurt on our watch. It happens because it's baseball, it's sports, and it's active. And but one of our jobs is to make sure we send them back healthy, both physically and mentally. So, we're selling ourselves. We're selling, yes, the beauty of Southwest Washington and Ridgefield, but we're also selling that Chris is a skipper, a manager that has a ton of experience, and they're not going to have to worry about discipline or about health. If we need to shut the kid down, we're going to call the college coach right away and say, here's what we're seeing, and we think that we should consider what's the next step. Do we shut him down? Does he get rehab? And if they get rehab, they typically go home to get the rehab. They're not going to get the rehab here unless it's just something small. We have a trainer in Mason. Mason comes from Proactive Physical Therapy. He's been with us since the beginning, and he'll keep them loose and get the aches out of them. But when it comes to an injury, we are trying to determine the level, give that communication immediately to the colleges, let them make the next decision. It's their property, not ours.
And I think you see a manifestation of that trust sometimes with some of the players you've had come back on back-to-back summers. Do you notice a difference with a kid, maybe his second go-round versus the first?
Well, we always hope that they come back because they did something that showed us hope that they were really developing and that they would come back and just be greater than they were. That happens sometimes, and sometimes they're just still the same player, right? But I think that, look, I didn't start out when you kind of asked me the first question, but I'll throw this in here right now. This is a community-based event, right? Our responsibility is to be good stewards of the community, to share a place of optimism, of where people can agree in this world of disagreement on why they just want to hang out at a beautiful ballpark on a beautiful night in a beautiful area of the country. And we don't forget that. So I think that, I lost you.
Oh, no worries. Let's talk about, go from that into the ballpark experience. Yeah. You average about 1,000 fans a game for some players, maybe not for players like who come from Oregon State. They're used to playing in front of fans, but for especially a high school kid, that's their first time playing with that many people in the stands. I love going to those games out at Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex, especially the afternoon games on Sunday, where those are some of your biggest draws, with kids getting in free. You have people on the outfield berm waiting. You got kind of that short porch in right field where they can maybe catch a home run ball. Just I'm going to plug you because you did everything but plug yourself. That's because you're always humble. Yeah.
Our partnership on Sunday for Kids Get In Free, which turned into one of our biggest nights of the week or biggest days of the week, is a partnership that we have with the Columbian and Peace Health. And it matters, because you guys really put muscle behind the promotion of that, and it turned into something that is sustainable and growing. So, we love day games. That's the only day of the week. It's 1:05 on Sundays. Everything else is at 6:35. But the experience in the park, which is kind of where I left it before I lost my train of thought, is just, it needs to be agreeable to multi-generations. It's grandma and grandpa, it's mom and dad, and it's the kids. And obviously, when the kids get hooked, then the parents and the grandparents have no choice.
Yes.
They have to bring them, right? We're going to add something this year to build on that fever with the kids. We're going to add a Rally Kids Club. Rally's our mascot. And it's time. We've been waiting. We can't introduce everything at once, but now we're going to add a kids club to give them experiences that, only the kids club will get. And we brought in a partner that I'm introducing here because we're not going to introduce till next week. I'll do it. Burgerville has come on. And that's a great brand for us to partner on Kids Club, where many of their vision and their approach to business is similar to ours. It's community. It's Southwest Washington. And it's given opportunity to families and kids.
Every time when we connect before the season, I ask you, what's going to be new at the ballpark? What's going to change about the ballpark experience? When you look back about where you started and kind of how the ballpark experience has developed, what do you think is the biggest difference from day one to now that you're sort of most proud of for instilling in the ballpark experience?
That's a great question, and one of them that I prepared myself for. Because I think it's important today to share, the new things that are going to happen. I think that the 6 years have shown us that we were surviving at first, and now we have to put finesse into this. because the quality of our delivery needs to go up in merchandise, in food, in all the options that we offer at the park to make it more enjoyable for fans. But the growth, you mentioned 1,000 people, and that's okay. We're up to like 1,354 average a game. And, where would be a nice place to land to be consistent? Probably between 1,600 and 1,700. Every year we add 100 or so to the average. But, the growth of introducing new items is always really scary because we worry about what our fans say. And unfortunately, we have to run the team, which means that sometimes we're going to make a perfect decision and sometimes it's going to be good, but it's not going to be perfect for the fan. We can't always satisfy every fan, but we have to satisfy the masses. And as long as we remember it's family affordable entertainment and it's a community-driven program and we have a responsibility to be good stewards of the community, that's the filter of everything we do. Whether it's what you read on social media or we do at the park, it's never too funny and it's never off color. Let somebody else in the league do that. We won't do it. It's respectful. That's what we thought Southwest Washington desired from us.
The commonality with a lot of things going on in local baseball is that beautiful facility out at Ridgefield where you get to call home. And that's where I kind of want to, expand this a little bit.
Yeah.
What has the unveiling and the establishment of a first-class all-weather turf facility like the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex meant not only to what you're able to do with the Raptors, but also high school baseball, where you're out at a lot of these high school games that are there. Suddenly they get to play through some of this bad weather we might have, but also with a club team like Northwest Star, which you're involved in.
Yeah. So again, I'll give just a generic answer as to what I think it means. There's other facilities that have been built in Southwest Washington. This Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex is a high volume now, high demand facility. Why? Because of the turf. And it's beautiful. It's a good place, a little stadium, if you need to showcase tournaments or regional opportunities. But I think that for the local teams, all the local high school teams and many of the local club teams, I think it offers the ability to play. I mean, I'll give you one example. So we are the concessionaire for all events at the park. And that's an agreement we have with the city. So today, on Tuesday, right? The girls softball for Ridgefield High School has been rained out or not be able to play wherever they were scheduled. So they were able to move it to the park, to Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex. A lot of that happens where it ends up being the game location because of the ability that it's not dirt and it's not grass. And unfortunately, springs can be brutal and are brutal around here. So just the opportunity, but the rental of the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex has a high demand to it. We run our own academy out of it, Northwest Star Academy. And, what we find there is, again, it's available year round because of the opportunity of weather resistant.
Have you noticed kind of a trickle-down effect on the baseline of talent at the high school level because of those opportunities? How would you assess obviously we've had, a long history of good baseball and great players for, players getting drafted. But now, I mean, every year it seems like there's a prospect that is drawing scouts to the area to get looked at. You have numerous players committing to big programs like UW straight out of high school. How would you assess sort of the state of local high school baseball at this point?
I think it's healthy. I think it's really healthy. I think that there's some change going on. You've seen like Seth Johnson move from Skyview to Battleground. So there's the level of play at certain schools have stayed up high or are trying to get back to a level that is really high. But I think overall, I grew up in Oregon, and my son played in Oregon, and we just thought we had really great baseball. And I think I've mentioned this to you a few times. But moving over here and not really knowing everything I needed to know about Southwest Washington high school baseball and junior baseball, it is a high level of baseball. It could be equal to or better than Oregon. And that's just something that doesn't get the credit across the river because, I guess, of Portland, the big city, right? But I think that it's equally as good or better. And there is so much talent. I mean, look, let's use a real example. Caden Vire. Remember Caden Vire? Skyview kid. Yeah. We had him pitch a couple times for us. He did not have a good outing. He had a really rough outing. But again, he was a graduating high school senior. And there were 8 scouts, professional scouts that day, because he was going to get drafted in that draft. And he ended up getting drafted. But, you know, those are the examples of, yeah, we get that for other players like the Mikey Canes of the world that have played for us. But we had that instant with Caden Vire, where that was a local high school kid that we did that favor for because we wanted to showcase him and let the pro scouts see him. So that there's always a player or two, and I don't know all their names all the time locally. There's a kid at Battleground right now that is just super fantastic.
Yeah, Jackson Hotchkiss, the outfielder, big power threat. I believe by one metric, the number 2 prospect in the state.
I saw him hit a home run the other day at the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex against the Ridgefield Spudders over the center field batter's eye. That was impressive. That does not happen with very many kids that age. But there's this talent that if we can, we're going to showcase it because that's part of us being part of the community.
Yeah. So when you look ahead to this season, you're building the roster.
Yeah.
Who are some players, maybe some familiar names that those who either follow local baseball at high school or Northwest College baseball, or maybe some returning faces? Who are some players who have thrown their hats in the ring so far for this summer?
Yeah, you know what? We haven't introduced them all yet,
okay.
The local ones, but there are probably 3 or 4 local kids, and there's about 4 returners. And, you know, I think that we love returners. You asked this earlier, but we're not stuck on it. I think that we need, and I've said this to you for 6 years, we need 4 or 5. And I think that brings a conduit back to the fans and back to their excitement about seeing a certain kid again. We don't need 12 or 15. And it doesn't happen because if we did our job right, they're moving to what might be the most premier high-level college wood bat league, and that is the Cape Cod League.
Sure.
And we've had multiple kids that just aren't going to come back because they're going to the Cape Cod League, which is for draftable kids. The kids that for sure are going to get drafted.
What I think is fascinating about the West Coast League is, first, the players can get a lot of different things out of it. And for different players, they're looking for different things out of it. For some players, it's to show out for scouts and enter the draft. But I think of a player like Will Chambers, who I think was a fan favorite.
He was the mayor.
Yeah, for him, what he wanted out of it was not only the opportunity to play again after coming back from just some horrific injuries, but to use what had been a really trying and long journey through the junior college level to eventually go and play baseball at a 4-year college, which he did. What do you remember stories like that as being kind of most proud of, with seeing kids get out of it what they wanted?
You know, I'll elaborate on Will.
Sure.
So Will signed out of high school with California Santa Barbara, which is a really high level D1 program, very, very successful. And he immediately blows a knee out. And he ends up back at College of the Canyons with Chris Cota. And he has to rehab the knee. Guess what then? He blows the other knee out. And so he came out here the first time to rehab, but he ends up being somebody that I always joke, you know, should be the mayor of Ridgefield because that's how popular he was. Yeah. But he was here for a whole different reason. And I'm going to lead you into another thought, which is that example of Will trying to get back to a high level of D1 baseball by rehabbing and putting in his work is something that now has blown up, and I'm not sure how we all feel about it, which is the portal. And the portal, has a role in football and basketball and baseball. And, if you follow the portal, it's the ability that now has been given to college players to move to another college with no penalty and no time to sit out and wait it out. You can make the decision and move. which is really been kind of crazy in a lot of ways, because you might have University of Washington football, such a successful season, their coach leaves to go to Alabama. A number of players the next day say, I'm not coming back. I'm going to another college because the coach left. So that's an example of what these kids are able to do, which I don't love all the time, because we grew up with the loyalty of playing for 4 years at a certain college and then being known as that kid from that college. Anymore, you see that game last night between Purdue and Connecticut. There were multiple times that the announcers were saying, this kid on Purdue played for Southern Illinois last year. You know, that's the ability the kids have with this portal. It also creates kids that come to us in the summer. And when you said what was Will's goal, to rehab and to try and get to a D1 school, now a lot of these kids are coming without really the assurance, or they already know that they're not going back to their old college, that they're looking for a new school.
It's almost like a re-audition for them.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the discussions that we're having with colleges when they call us and ask us about a certain player, you know, Mikey Kane, when he went to Oregon State, you know, he was being auditioned as to where he was going to go to school next, and he made a big impact on Oregon State, and we're proud of that. But that's a decision now that they get to make, and so it's weird. Last summer, when, you know, we put in the program and we announced the players under a certain college they play for, and all of a sudden, halfway through the season, we might be announcing a new college.
Yes.
Because they signed with a new college. So that's bizarre a little bit, but that's just the rules of engagement now.
Well, it almost makes a league like the West Coast League have even a more important role to play in the landscape of college baseball. If now kids are constantly looking, how can I better my position? You got the, you know, NIL opportunities maybe where there's a financial stake if they can catch on with a big program.
Yeah, Micah, I haven't had NIL yet where a kid has come here and said, if you're going to use me at all, you're going to pay me. I might have to call you and say, hey, does the Columbian want to sponsor?
I don't know about if we can find a few nickels for anything, but it allows a certain level of dynamicism to a league like the West Coast League, where it's not just college baseball happens in the spring and then shuts down. It's really an all-year thing now.
And, you know, one other thing about let's go to minor leagues, because we haven't talked about this, and about 2 or 3 years ago, this was happening. So Major League Baseball shrunk their minor league footprint, right? We saw Salem go away. You know, Eugene was threatened. Hillsborough was threatened. Tri-Cities was threatened. So they shrunk their footprint, I think, by 25% because of the cost. So what happened is that because there were less minor league teams by 25%, there were less places for kids to end up getting drafted and being seen at their first step of being drafted and going to a minor league opportunity that was trying to lead to a major league opportunity. So there's less of that. So part of what's happened is that we have partnered now, the West Coast League, with Major League Baseball in kind of an informal setup, but becoming more formal, where they want the data now from these kids more than they ever have wanted it, because they don't have the luxury anymore of watching them at minor league opportunity because they shrunk that. So some of these kids need the data to follow them.
Wow.
College, summer, college, drafted. And so our data has become so much more important, and that's where analytics have really come into play. It's a thing of the past that you have to analyze data.
Yes.
And we do a pretty good job of it, but we have to have data to look at how a kid is really developing, be able to communicate that with the kid, be able to communicate that with his college. Where did he start? Where did he end? How did he do? How hard did he hit the ball? How fast does he run? How hard does he throw a fastball? All these things, you know, come into play, and we're adding another piece of software this year. We have TrackMan. We have Synergy, which is a video component to TrackMan that can watch how a kid does and spit out the data. And now we're adding something called 643. And 643 is a spray chart, essentially, of what tendencies both the hitters and the pitchers have, that we can easily scout and to use against the visiting teams. But technology is super important, and we've had to adapt.
Well, and I think that goes back to having a first-class facility that you can equip with all the radar sensing and velocity sensing.
Well, and you asked me something. You asked me a lot of things about the facility. I know that we're all in love with it. I am. It's cute. I just use it. It's cute. It's efficient. I can manage it and operate it correctly without a lot of challenges. But what is the challenge? The challenge is growth. And that's a great challenge. And that's what my team is tasked with every day. New food opportunities. That's coming. We bought a 16-foot food trailer, and that's going to be a tater tot menu and a bento menu. We need new things, both for volume of getting people through, and also we have a big season ticket base. We're in the top 10% of the league with how many season tickets we have, and those people come all the time, which sometimes surprises me how often they come, but they love it. You see the same faces.
I see the mayor of Vancouver out there almost all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Ann's there and the mayor of Battleground. Again, it doesn't matter if they're the mayor or not. It's just a lot of the same people with season tickets. So we have to offer a little something different because they'll get bored. And so growth is this challenge right now, which is not yet how many seats I have, but how do I serve them appropriately with the offerings that I have.
Yeah. We'll kind of end this on kind of a fun note. Every time you get a group of ball players together, there's always some characters. When you look back at some of the teams of the past, who are some of the wildest characters or most fun characters that immediately come to mind?
Well, Will Chambers is first.
Yes.
I mean, Will was a big personality both on the bench and, with the fans.
Yes.
And, the first year we had a catcher in Bowdoin who had a mullet. And the fans right behind home plate that had their season tickets, he became a fan favorite, and they started wearing wigs to the game because he had the mullet. So, these things take on a lot of character of their own, and I think that you lead me to saying we expect them to be respectful, to treat their host family with respect. There's house rules. We also expect them to not go on the road and make a mess out of it. In the 6 years, I've only had to bring one kid home and ask him to go back home and go to his college and leave us. That's not very much, and it really wasn't that big a deal, except it was disrespectful. So my point is, that's Chris and Nick and the staff and ourselves of saying, we live here. We expect you to leave it clean. You're going home and we're staying. And we have an expectation of what you kind of started with, which, how much fun is it? And you don't hear of a lot of uproar during games of things that are going wrong. You hear a lot of cheering about them supporting the team.
All right. Well, when is opening day, and where can people go for more information and tickets?
Yeah. Opening day is May 30th. We're going to be playing the Cowlitz Black Bears at home, and you can go to ridgefieldraptors.com for tickets. Single game tickets are on sale, and anything else that you need, we can be communicated through email at ridgefieldraptors.com.
All right. Well, Gus Farah, Ridgefield Raptors, coming back for another season. It's a season that's followed just a trajectory of growth over the years. It's a great time out at the ballpark if you're looking for something to do this summer. Thank you so much for coming down and talking some baseball. At all levels, it's exciting in Southwest Washington. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Micah. The relationship with you guys has been great, and I always appreciate you.
All right. And we will see you next week for another episode of Varsity 360.